stand together as one. That is why it is great for us to host His Excellency here today, basically to continue with the agitation for a free Uganda, for a democratic Uganda, because we believe a free Uganda is a free Kenya. A democratic Uganda is a democratic Kenya. Our struggles are united. We are all one people, we are one community, and that is why as human rights organizations, as community-based institutions, here at the coast and in Kenya in general, we want to send a message of solidarity to all Ugandans through His Excellency here, that we shall support each other when it comes to issues of human rights. We shall support each other when it comes to issues of democracy. Recently, we saw Parliament this week electing members of Parliament to represent Kenya in the East African Legislative Assembly. We are appealing particularly to those members of Parliament from the coast here, Hassan Omar, Shahbal and others, to ensure that the message of democracy, the message of human rights, the message of justice is sent to all countries in Eastern Africa, and more so in Africa in general. So I don't want to take much time. I want to welcome His Excellency to speak to us, to say a few words, and then after that, if there are any questions, we will welcome members of the media and anyone else. If you have questions, then we'll respond, and then we'll end it at that. So Mheshimiwa, in Kenya, His Excellency is Mheshimiwa. Please speak to the people. Let us hear the message that you have for Kenyans and Ugandans, East Africans in general. Welcome.
Thank you very much, my brother. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, members of the press. I want to thank our brothers of HAKI Africa for having us, our brothers and sisters, for having us. We don't take this for granted. With me, I came with part of the leadership of the National Unity Platform and People Power, the party and movement that I lead in Uganda. We are glad to be here in Kenya. Yesterday, we had a Human Rights Accountability Conference, a Uganda Human Rights Accountability Conference in Nairobi, Kenya. Why? Because we cannot have it in Uganda, because the authorities in Uganda have no regard for human rights whatsoever. Even those that are there to have prayers, to have a vigil back home in our offices, were arrested, and of course dispersed with tear gas and live bullets. That's the situation in Uganda today. We are thankful that we are not isolated by our fellow members of the East African community, our brothers and sisters. It is not the first time. Kenyans have always stood with us. I am alive today, able to speak to you, because you Kenyans started protests that spread to the world over, and those are the protests that pressured General Museveni's military regime to release me from the dungeons where I had been detained. We are thankful for that. We should always remind each other that dictatorship in any part of Africa is a threat to democracy in every part of Africa. Like democracy, dictatorships are contagious and very easy to spread, especially across the border. When I was looking at one of the placards, one of the ladies was holding, it was saying yesterday it was Tanzania, today it's Uganda, and tomorrow it might be Kenya.
Yes.
And we have been taught time and again that freedom and democracy is always just one step away from extinction if we are not vigilant. While we appreciate you, while we call upon you to continue standing with us, to continue highlighting our plight, we also ask you to be vigilant, to defend the little freedoms that you have jealously, to defend the democracy you have jealously. We are very aware that Kenya is certainly not at the levels of democracy that it deserves to be, but you are certainly on the road to where all of us want to be. Keep going, keep being vigilant, but most importantly, let's look out for each other as citizens of East Africa. Let's continue holding the authorities accountable to respect the rule of law, to respect the rights of all the people that they rule over. I thank you very much, and I greet you once again.
Viva democracy, viva!
Viva!
Viva justice, viva!
Viva!
Viva human rights, viva!
Viva!
Viva freedom, viva!
Viva!
Your Excellency, one of the issues that we are faced with currently as a country, we know that there have been attempts by one or two members of parliament to introduce an idea of removing the presidential two-term limits. We want to send this message because we know Uganda has lived through that experience. We want to send a message to the members of parliament that as human rights defenders, as activists, we want the constitution implemented to the letter. We cannot allow a perpetual presidency because we know the effects of that. We have seen it in Uganda, we are seeing it in Rwanda, and Kenya cannot go that direction. So we are urging Kenyans to resist any such attempts. Any individual in power for more than 10 years and he feels they need to continue still being in power, it means that that individual is incompetent and that they cannot deliver their mandates, because 10 years is more than enough time you need to express your development plans, for you to implement whatever you want to do. And there is a reason why you have term limits, so that you can allow others also to get an opportunity to lead this country. It's introducing fresh blood. It's introducing new ideas. So we are saying as HAKI Africa, learning from the experience of Uganda, that we shall resist any attempts to change the constitution to remove the presidential two-term limits. And maybe His Excellency can also speak to that from their experience, and then we'll open it up to members of the media to ask questions.
Thank you very much. I have spoken about constitutionalism and the need to maintain constitutionalism, not just constitutions. Right now, to our brothers and sisters in Kenya, I don't want to speak to it. I want to point at it. I don't want to use so many words. I want to point at Uganda. We experienced it in 2005 when General Museveni moved through his proxies a scheme to change the constitution and remove term limits. And when it was time for him to be held back by the age limit, when he clocked 75, he once again, through proxies, moved a scheme to change the constitution once again. Of course, he did that with a lot of impunity, with a lot of violence, but he did it. What does it show you, Kenyans? That is how it starts. It might start like one errant MP making irresponsible statements. And yes, some leaders might actually come out to deny it. General Museveni, while he was being interviewed here in Kenya, he said, certainly not, I will not rule beyond 75. When it was talked about that he was intending to change the constitution and remove term limits, he dismissed it as idle talk. But ultimately, you know, we lost lives, we lost lots of resources, all in a bid to change the constitution and maintain himself in power. So do not be woodwinked. It is you and only you, the people of Kenya alone, that can retain your constitution, that can protect your constitution. Of course, we continue to tell you that defend your constitution before your constitution is too weak to defend you.
Thank you so much. We'll now open it up to anyone who might have a question so that we can respond. Yes, Mtalaki from Citizen.
My question is for Bobi Wine. Do you think the East African leadership has not delivered their mandate in terms of advocating for the rule of law, and specifically
In regard to
the rule of law and what has been happening in Uganda?
Thank you very much. While I like to hold individuals accountable for their individual wrongs, while I want to hold General Museveni for his atrocities and his, impunity in Uganda, while we want to hold him personally and individually accountable, in the context of East Africa, we shall hold the East African leaders accountable, because we are brought together by values. It's unfortunate that over time the East African community has been reduced to a club of presidents. It has been reduced to a club of incumbents, where none of them holds the other accountable, but instead are there to buffer each other and defend each other. they tend to put diplomacy ahead of democracy and ahead of rights. So we still hold them accountable, not just the East African community, but also the African Union. It has let us down. It is very, very disappointing to see the European Union and the United States and the UN human rights and other international organizations looking out for the rights of Africans when you have our African brothers and sisters whose major preoccupation is to keep themselves in power at the cost of the rights and freedoms of their own people.
Thank you so much. Any other question?
I have a question. Just the other day you were saying that the fact that you're a human being, you defend the fact that you're a human being. Can you please explain that so that maybe we take for granted whatever we have, so that we can be able to understand from your perspective, defending the fact that you're a human being?
Thank you very much. Yeah, it is rather sad that in Uganda we are reduced to fighting not for democracy, not for civil rights, but for human rights. We are fighting for the right to be human beings, to have the right to think for ourselves, to have the right to own our mouths, to own our brains. Yesterday, so many victims of torture were paraded. Among them were women that were raped by soldiers. Among them were young people that were mutilated at the orders and sometimes at the supervision of General Museveni's son, Muhoozi Kainerugaba. Yeah. In that room, we had a young man who was castrated like a goat. I mean, castration. So we are demanding for the right to be human beings first. Before we even demand for democratic rights, before we demand for civil rights, we are demanding for the right to be human beings and to stay human beings.
Thank you.
Okay, one final one. Pili, then yes.
Thank you very much. My name is Pili Salim. I'm from Nawiri Social Justice Center. And His Excellency, I'm very proud of what you do. I'm very pleased with the work that you do in Uganda. I've been to Uganda. I'm Ugandan. I'm a former student of Susa, and I was impressed by the fact that the Secretary General had a seat. The seats were 3, and he said, "No, we have to have a lady to sit here." So he asked me to sit here. That shows one thing: in a world whereby we have a patriarchal system, although it's very tough for the ladies, you guys are giving the ladies a chance also to be represented. My message, or what I would like you to tell us, as youth, I stand here and speak for the youth and the women especially. So for the women and for the youth, as we see it in Kenya, the youth are not given chance most of the times. So at the end of the day, they're all seated at the back. Even the women are all seated at the back. They're not told to come up, or they're not that aggressive to come up and speak for themselves. As a person that has been active in this activism and demanding for rights, and we see that even your wife is at the forefront to help you and support your cause, what message do you have to the youth and the women in Kenya?
Oh, thank you. It won't be my message. I'll just speak one of the messages that was given to us by one of our fathers, Thomas Sankara, who said a revolution without women is dead at birth.
Yeah.
You know, women are one half, and in most cases even bigger than more than the men.
Yeah.
The humanity is like a bird with 2 wings, which can certainly not fly with one wing. I have personally been impacted by women. I'm a product of women, and many of us here have been inspired by women. So women are equal players and equal contributors in the development and the growth of humanity. So it's only reasonable and logical that we have an inclusive society that empowers women and men equally.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Allow me to close it at that because of time. But yeah, we will be walking out in case anyone wants to have a picture. Feel free. But solidarity forever.
Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever.
For East Africa makes us strong.
People's power.
Our power, people's power.
Yeah, solidarity forever from the Uganda, from Kenya Civil Society, headed by HAKI Africa. Ebimu ku bitongole ebirwanyiza eddembe ery'obuntu mu ggwanga erya Kenya olunaku olwaleero bakyaza President His Excellency Robert Kyagulanyi Ssentamu Uganda olunaku olwaleero ebigenda kubeera mu Kenya wano nenga ensonga enkulu asoose kukyalirako ekitebe kino ekitwala abalwanyizi b'eddembe bonna wano mu Kenya wano mu kibuga Mombasa. Ekibuga Mombasa kye kimu ku bibuga ebinene mu Africa oba giyite East Africa. Amaze olunaku lulamba ng'atambula ajja wano agenda alambula ku bantu n'olunaku olwaleero nga bw'olabye abadde aze kusinkana abakulu. Message enkulu kwongera kukootira abantu okukolera awamu n'okumenkisha nti at least East Africa bakoleramu. Akabonero kanene eri East Africa bagezaako okugatta amaanyi okulaba nti ekituuka ku East Africa ekituuka ku Uganda kiba kituuka ku Kenya, ekituuka ku Tanzania kiba kituuka ku Rwanda. So yenkola enkulu baagala kulaba nti buli kimu kitambula bulungi.
Take this one. Utatumiwa na huyo.
President w'abantu agezaako kwekuba selfie ne mwanyinaffe alina His Excellency.
Say freedom.
Nice one.
Ali mu ggwanga erya Kenya basoose mu meeting ey'akafubo wakati w'abakulembeze abalwanyiriza. Abalwanyirizi b'eddembe ly'obuntu mu ggwanga erya Kenya baaniriza President. Basoose mu playingira documentary mu main hall omubadde meeting tujja kukwata bibalaga essaawa ena ku Ghetto TV. Bingi nnyo oluvannyuma lwa wano tovaako. Tujja kuva wano mu dakiika ntono nnyo, dakiika nga 10 tubajja kutwala ku mukolo omunene ogw'olunaku olwaleero wano mu kibuga Mombasa. NUP chapter Kenya ejja kubanga etongozebwa amatongole. Musikirize basiibulire wano mu dakiika ntono nnyo, tegeeza muno tujja tukubawo live and kirya botalabye wano omukolo gw'amaanyi nnyo, omukolo gw'amaanyi nnyo, omukolo gw'amaanyi nnyo. Tovaako, tujja kuba tukomawo n'omukolo omunene ogwa Kunga Kenya Kunga wano mu Mombasa.
People power. People power. Our power. Our power. People power. Viva Kenya, viva! Viva! Viva East Africa, viva! Viva! Viva Uganda, viva! Viva!
Yeah, on behalf of Ghetto TV family, nze Arsingwize Jonan, baganda bange bonna Richard Kalema, Mugenyi Ronald Ashraf Kasirye n'abalala bonna muganda ffe Bwejire Salongo, webali nga bulijjo. Katuveeko katono kugambye tovaako, tegeeza muno Kunga Kenya Kunga olunaku olwaleero tukomawo live and clear. Have a blessed 2-3-5 minutes. We are coming back live.